Okay, good afternoon, members. Those of you in the chamber and those of you online, apologies for the delay in the start of this meeting. It was a slight IT issue. Good afternoon and welcome to this January meeting of the Scrutiny and Audit Committee. I'll just remind members, as usual, and you're all very familiar with the procedure, but this is being recorded and will be live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. If you can keep your microphones off unless you're about to speak, and raise your electronic hand online and your hand in person in the chamber. But we all know that procedure anyway. Thank you. Mrs Mackenzie, are there any apologies and substitutions, please?
Thank you, Convener. We have apologies from Councillors Shepherd and Wan, with Councillors McLaren and Durno substituting. Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 2, any declarations of interest and statements of transparency? No. Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 3 is the minute of the previous meeting, and it's submitted for approval as a correct record, the minute of meeting of this committee of the 28th of November 2023. Are they agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you. And agenda item number 4 is I'll use the short term. Mrs Watson's going to talk to this one, and it's the RIPSA quarterly report. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. We present to you the quarterly report for RIPSA authorisations for the period 1st October to 31st December last year. And as the report notes, there was one authorisation granted for surveillance. Happy to take any questions. Thank you. Okay, thank you. This is straightforward. Any questions? No. Comments? No. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item number 5 is the Angus Alive Annual Performance Report 2022-23. We have Mr Cargill, Mr Knight and Mr Stevens with us. What I will intimate to you and members online is there's to be a very short, just over a minute's video. There may be an echo with the sound, but the sound is only music. There is no talking in it, so the sound may be switched off. It's just figures and pictures, so you're not actually going to miss anything. The main information is in the actual video, not the sound. Okay, Mr Cargill, thank you.
Thanks, Convener. Good afternoon, members. I'm just introducing this Angus Alive Performance Report, which covers the period financial year 22-23. Pleased to bring this report here. I think last year it was in April we brought this forward, but bringing it forward to the January meeting this time alongside the Tayside Contracts report. It's nice having both key council partners' performance reports at the same meeting. Angus Alive's performance report is really a comprehensive report highlighting their key achievements during the year, including the performance stats, which are included in the report, covering their 5 main service functional areas. Just wanted to highlight a few things from the report, really. Firstly, from the Chair and the Chief Executive's overview, just to reinforce, I suppose, the challenging operating environment that Angus Alive continue to operate within. Clearly, members will be well aware of the impact of the pandemic on Angus Alive, and followed by the cost of living crisis means that people have less expendable income to spend on things like sports and leisure. So it is a challenging environment, and to compound that, we also have a continued pressure from the Council's budget perspective, where Angus Alive are also being asked to make savings in the next 2 years, which is also significant. So I think it's worth noting that as a backdrop. I think I'd also highlight that Angus Alive have now really picked up the reins, if you like, on their own transformation review and really taken the lead on that work. It's been done very much in partnership with the Council, but it's good to see as part of the report that that's a key feature in there for progressing how they can live within their budget envelope. The Council obviously will support Angus Alive in that transformation, and that is also one of our key priorities as part of our Council plan, and it's also, as I mentioned, around the savings element. That's part of our change programme. Members will also be aware of some aspects of transformation already kind of in train, if you like, through the feasibility study reports that we've commissioned and there's other initiatives that are included within Angus Alive's business plan for the forthcoming years ahead to live within the budget envelope. Members of this committee had raised previously around some concerns at the time around the investment in sports equipment that Angus Alive were making at the time. The good news on that, I think, which also features in the report, is that the return at this stage on investment looks positive, and there has been a bit of an uptick in memberships, so long may that continue. The report through that highlights an overall net income position for 22-23 of Angus Alive of around £514,000, which is a good position to be in, albeit that has to be sort of sustainable going forward and not just due to one-offs. But nonetheless, that's a good position for the year end. I would sort of make a final point around the report just to say that in terms of the board of Angus Alive do continue to provide very strong support and really good governance around the organisation, which is a huge sort of personal time commitment for the board members to support the organisation the way they do. And that really provides good governance and really underpins the robust way that it's managed, which is excellent. That's me, Ian Stevens and Colin Knight, who are acting up in Kirsty Hunter's place at the moment as Chief Executives. It's a joint acting up. We're here to take members' questions on the report. But just before we do that, Ian and Colin had asked if we could just play a short video, which will just give a quick overview of their performance during the course of that year. Thank you.
Thank you both. Do you want to add anything? Anything further to what was an echo? Anything further to what Gordon said in his report?
I don't think we'd have anything further to add at this stage, other than obviously we felt the video would give you a quick snapshot of some of the figures that are obviously contained within the report, and we're obviously happy to take any questions from the floor or from those online today.
Councillor Bell. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm absolutely gutted not to see my paddleboarding experience not in the video, but thanks for the report. You mentioned volunteers quite a few times in the report, and I wondered if you have an idea of how many volunteers are actually working with you. There's such an untapped resource in the community. It's great to see people engaging in that kind of role and what kind of role that they're doing. That would be really helpful. And I wondered if you could sneak in a little update on any discussions with community groups around facilities in Kerry and Brechin. Thanks.
Sorry, just scrolling down. be sure to feature your paddleboarding in the next video that we put together. I think, yeah, in terms of the volunteers, we've got volunteers working across the whole of our service areas with us in various different programmes, whether that be branching out through our countryside adventure team or whether it's within our libraries and museums sector. It's not something I have a stat on at this moment in time, but I can certainly pull that together and we can get information to you. You're quite correct in what you're saying. It's an untapped resource in terms of how we can better reach our communities and link to our communities. I think that's a key part for us moving forward, absolutely. And yeah, happy to come back with information around that and how we link in with obviously the bodies out there literally across the road from us here in terms of voluntary action. Angus as well, I think is a crucial link for us. In terms of Kerry and Brechin, the change request process is underway in terms of, I assume your question is around the Kerry Gateway to the Glens and Brechin Townhouse Museums in particular. That process is underway at the moment. We are working closely with our strategic commissioning colleagues at the Council. There are feasibility studies underway which the Council are assisting with, along with the community groups. So we are on track, I believe, to hear back in the next, it was to be January through to March. They're all at slightly different timeframes, so I don't have an exact date on that, but we'll work with Alison and her team to bring those as quickly as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dorn, a question?
Yeah, thank you. My question kind of leads on a little bit from that, so that's quite nice. I wanted activities for children outside of the Monifeith area, across Monifeith and Sidlaws, and we have access to a lot of community groups and halls within those spaces. Thinking of the kind of Millennium Hall and halls in Murrows and Teeling and the like, and I know that there's a great kind of some sessions that run in the libraries relating to Lego and BookBug and other activities, and I just wondered if it was kind of similar to that question that's just been asked, any plans to be able to use those resources to spread those activities a little bit further, particularly I think within the kind of holiday periods where people are looking for those activities. It'd be really great to see that happening. And I also have a second question, if I can, based on kind of something that's coming up later on the agenda, was just about the kind of robustness of systems at Angus Alive relating to cyber attacks, because I'm aware of the incident that's happened with the British Library and other kind of library organisations. And that's not really covered within the annual report. So it's just something that I wanted to kind of bring up and see if we could get an answer on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for that question. And we'll probably take that as a bit of a double act, and I'll take the first part of that question. Yeah, in terms of the activities, particularly in Monifeith and Sidlaw area, has always been a challenge, I think, in terms of trying to get resource to that space a number of years ago, and probably pre-COVID. When I look back at some of that, we did a lot of analysis around it, and there were a number of community groups and community clubs at that stage. I think it's how we build those links with those groups as well and make it I suppose ultimately cost effective for us and for those community groups that we can hopefully develop that. I would be keen to explore in that space if there's any links in with the community council in that space, for example. I'm not 100% sure on the setup there at this moment in time, but we could certainly look into that, and more than happy to try and do that. And yeah, the holiday side of that, we'll do link closely with the Active Schools team in that space as well. So I think it's important that we don't double up our resource from that perspective, but we're actually trying to be as smart as we can in the way we take that forward.
So that is, we can certainly start to look at the use of the mobile libraries and start to use some of the resources out and about a little bit more, and that's a programme and a scenario that we look to obviously expand and review constantly to see getting the best use out of that environment. Second part of your question around cyber attacks, I would bow to the superior knowledge of the Angus Council IT team on that particular one, and the reason I'm saying that is that all of our systems link back into the council networks. We get our support service from Angus Council IT, therefore we basically adhere to all the Angus Council systems, procedures, processes with regards to that. We don't have any standalone situations. We always link back in through the council network.
Thanks for that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gall, a question?
Thank you, Convener. It was just on page 23, we can see obviously after the adjustments there's a net deficit of 749,000. Obviously we know there was a big impact from the pandemic and there was deferred years to go and change plan, but next year there'll be another trim on the management fee. Obviously add a few levers at their disposal, and it kind of depends on 77% of your total cost being wages. So you've got wages to play with or sales to increase. On the year 2022-2023, what did the wages and did the sales meet expectations? I'm just thinking about sustainability going forward, given these are going to be the two critical areas to either save money or increase income.
Yeah, so again, we'll tag team on this response, if that's okay. Thanks for the question, Gull. So the position at the end of 22-23 was that we had a £514,000 surplus position, but after the pension adjustments, that's when the deficit shows. So we were able to put £514,000 back into the pot, and we've been able to do that every year since Angus Alive was formed. Not 514, but different levels every year since Angus Alive was formed. In terms of where that 514 was made up in 22-23, that was mainly from an employee slippage situation, so where we were holding vacancies and such like. So there was a fair bit of funding came out from that scenario, and the other part of that 514 was really made up from advanced income in terms of what the targets were for 22-23, so we actually exceeded in terms of those income numbers. And Colin, I think, will go on to give us a little bit more information on what those income numbers were made up from.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And I think, Councillor Golden, coming back to your question there, it's obviously vitally important that we do look at anything that we're investing in as to what the return on investment is, and what our income levels will look like from the back of that, but also looking to operate as efficiently as we possibly can in terms of staffing numbers that we currently have within the organisation. And I think just to touch upon a couple of areas, just to give a couple of highlights from the sport and leisure side of things, something that, Convener, you alluded to in terms of the investment into sports equipment particularly, but into the gym investments that took place across that period of time. I'm pleased to say that in terms of our membership numbers at the start of 22-23, we embarked off with 5,375 members. At the end of that period, so at the end of March 2023, we ended up with 8,394 members. So it's an increase of just over 3,000, which I think is we are really pleased with, to put an understatement on that, and how we're taking that process forward. We did make a slight change over that period of time with our Learn to Swim programme becoming a standalone membership at that time. So there's, within that figure, there are 1,561 we ended that year with who were on a Learn to Swim membership with us. And that resulted in a number of, now trying to work out these figures was a bit confusing, but pre-COVID we had 1,200 swimmers as part of that programme. Currently, as we sit today, we have 2,500 on that programme. So it's doubled those numbers, which I think is fantastic for us to be able to report today. I know that's crossing into this year rather than the year we're looking at, but I think that's important just to mention. As we started at pre-COVID, which everybody loves the pre-COVID mention, so the pre-COVID stats in terms of sports memberships, we were sat at 7,924 as of the end of March 2020, when we entered the various periods of lockdown that we're obviously all aware of. So again, pleasing to report that by the end of 2023, we were at that 8,394 mark, so it was 470 up, which I think was a good recovery from the position we were in at that moment in time. So hopefully that gives you some information there and answer to your question.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gregg, a question?
Thank you, Convener. Looking at page 33 of the combined papers, specifically with museums and how we stack up, you mentioned that you've had over this reporting period 26,103 visitors, which I think if we had one museum would be quite an impressive figure, but we've got 7, so averaging that out across the 7, that equates to about 3,700 visitors per year. Take that down to a month, it's about 300 visitors a month, which I don't think is a particularly high number, given the cost of staffing and utilities and things to keep that particular building operational. So what are Angus Live going to do to try and increase those visit numbers, hopefully quite substantially? We've obviously lost museums now in Brecon and Kirriemuir. So how do we stack up, as in how are we going to increase those numbers, and how do we compare to other museums and facilities in similar neighbouring local authorities, which might give us and the public a better idea as to how well our museums are actually performing?
Okay, thanks for the question, Councillor Gregg. I guess start with the last bit first, which is how we compare to others. It's very difficult to compare apples and pears, so to speak, because every museum venue is so totally different. It's been a really difficult marketplace in terms of museum recovery. So probably our main museum space, which has been Signal Tower space, has performed above average in terms of that recovery piece. So that's kind of the last part of what you were querying as such. In terms of the number of museums, we had 5 museums, not 7, sorry, to correct you. So obviously those percentage numbers look a little bit different. But in terms of where we were in the 2019-20 period, we had 22,647 admissions for that period. So actually, when you compare that to the pre-pandemic period, we're actually slightly up. Am I happy with those numbers? No, I'm not. And I think we need to be really looking to increase these numbers quite substantially on what is currently there. How do we do that? Well, we need to invest in the museums, and that's part of the strategy to actually returning 2 of the museums to the council for potential community operation, and to let us concentrate on the 3 main museums around Angus. And then we can work on an investment programme to really improve these facilities, because I think we would all be honest to say that these facilities right now are not up to the standard that we would hope that they would be. But we will now try and do something about that. We've got an investment programme which is currently happening in the Signal Tower Museum. Our Board of Directors has just currently approved a further feasibility works for the next stage of Montrose Reimagined. And just up the road from here, there's been a bit of investment gone into the Methven Museum for increased lighting, windows and flooring to improve those facilities as well. So hopefully with all that combined, then that will help to grow those numbers going forwards.
Just if I may, Chair, I picked the number of 7 because on page 16 of the combined papers, under the museum section, it lists Angus Archives 1, Arbroath Art Gallery 2, Brecon Townhouse Museum, so that'd be 3, Gateway to the Glens Museum 4, Montrose Museum 5, the Methven Museum 6, and the Signal Tower 7. So that's where I get the 7 from, because that's the information that's in the report.
Yeah, okay, apologies. Obviously that includes some of the gallery space and things that we have as well. So yeah, absolutely, my apologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Speed, a question?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. A couple. Yeah, there's clearly a lot of work going on within Angus Alive, and a lot of efforts been made to kind of move out of that kind of pandemic recovery period positively, albeit we're all aware of the pressures that you're under. There is just the one line within the report that makes reference to the access service, and there is that one statistic in terms of the amount of inquiries made. I just wondered if you had a breakdown. It's almost 18,000 inquiries made, and I just wondered if there was a breakdown and some figures behind that in terms of, you know, does it break down to the amount of hours spent with each customer, each inquiry, and what type of inquiry was made? That's my first question. And secondly, in terms of kind of the sport and leisure side of the business, it's great to see you know, an increase in memberships and activity in and around your facilities. I just wondered what was being done to kind of monitor and measure in terms of ensuring that kind of equality of customer, and that, you know, people are managing to access the facilities that are there. So for example, the new gyms I think this is something I've touched on before, in terms of just making sure that they're able to cater for, you know, different ages and stages and abilities of people. Please.
Thanks, Councillor Speed. I'll take the first part, which is the access question. So, yeah, there was just shy of 18,000 access inquiries. I don't have the breakdown to hand, but I can obviously get that across to you after this meeting. Essentially, from that 18,000, though, I know that the vast majority of those are coming from housing inquiries. But as I said, I can obviously get a fuller set of information off the back end of that. Those 18,000 inquiries, again, I'm just looking at pre-pandemic numbers. So pre-pandemic, we were just sitting around about the 23,000 inquiries. So back up to 18,000 in our recovery phase is obviously we're back up to nearly at the level that we were pre-pandemic. So yeah, as I said, I can get you further information on the breakdown of those inquiries out with the meeting.
Yeah, no, thanks. Just on the second part of your question there, Councillor Speed, we are very keen that obviously it's high-level numbers. As you're fully aware, I think we're looking to try and always work in terms of equality and equity in terms of accessing our facilities. And I know there was a visit took place certainly down at Arbroath, which I think you were along to as well, to look at the new facility down there. And it's something that we've worked very closely with the suppliers for that gym and fitness suite equipment to make sure that we're making the areas accessible and usable by everybody in our community. I think that's actually vital, and it's a massive key aspect for us at all ages, stages, whether people need additional support needs in whichever way that comes, then we need to try and find a way of making that available to people. And absolutely, we're keen to work with whether it be community groups or whoever is able to work with us on that front. We're more than happy to do that through our teams, and particularly through our disability and inclusion lead through the organisation as well. And that goes for out with sport and leisure as well, and that's across into our library spaces or whichever other services we're operating.
Okay, Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thanks. So I maybe just pick up those conversations with Mr. Knight and Mr. Stephen offline as well. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Colin or Ian, I have one, and I think you've touched on it, page 37, about the £900,000 investment programme, and you've done 3 sports centres already, and I did visit Arbroath a year past. Excellent, actually. This is the start of a 900,000, so I take it there's more in the pipeline, is there?
Yeah, certainly in terms of those gym refurbs at that moment in time, I think in terms of when that was caught, there was Arbroath Sports Centre, Brecon Community Campus and Montrose Sports Centre had been renovated at that stage. We've now also concluded that for Community Campus, Canusi Sports Centre and Saltire Sports Centre. The first 3 came online in June 22. The other 3 have now come online in July and September of 23, so they'll also be picked up in future annual reports. But I am able to say today, and pleased to say as well, that across that whole spectrum up until now, with those gym refurbs, we can confirm that there's a 60.13% to be exact, increase in usage across those facilities, which I think is fantastic as well, to go alongside the membership numbers obviously in there as well. And that is purely the gym use in those facilities that we're analysing at that point.
That's absolutely excellent. And also I noticed on your video there was in the last year 300 GP referrals, and how does that work? Oh, I know how it works. Obviously GPs refer people. Is it anybody from a GP practice, or does it have to be members of Angus Alive? And how does that work? Is that an income stream for you?
In short to that, it could be anybody that could be referred into Pro, and there are self-referral opportunities for people as well. And we're now working very closely, again, a project that I think those in the room and those in the call will be aware of is the, I always get this name's a bit of a tongue tie for me, the Angus Prevention Proactive Care Group, which we're working very closely with ourselves, Health and Social Care Partnership and Angus Council. So we're now coming towards almost the end of that project, but we're looking to extend that with the current funding that we have in place, which is allowing us, we now have a new referral system which I'm pleased to say has been signed off just in the last couple of weeks or so, so we're in the process of doing that at the moment. We now have in place a team of health and wellbeing advisors working across various areas in Angus at this moment. So I think in a year's time from now we'll have the stats and information from that, which I think will prove a real difference in that space. But we are obviously working very closely at the moment with the Council and the Health and Social Care Partnership to try and fund that project for another period of time. We're actually meeting tomorrow morning to formalise a funding bid to go in to start to look at extending that. We're about a year or so out from the end of that project, so we think that's a good time to do that. We had hoped to be slightly further ahead than where we are, but I think just with all the challenges that are there, I think we're in a good place, and we need to make this available to as many people as we possibly can. To fund that moving forward. In terms of the income stream, we do need to work on that side of things. I think where the benefit shows in the long term will be hopefully that the NHS are seeing less patients coming through, and that's what we really need to achieve. How we demonstrate that is what we need to get to the bottom of.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Bell.
Just a comment, actually, thanks for that information, Colin. When I first joined the NHS in the late 90s, Angus had a GP referral on exercise programme, and I think it was one of the very early ones in the whole of Scotland, if not the first. And it's great to see the Council and the Health and Social Care Partnership continue to support that kind of prevention and early intervention activity. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Devine, a comment? We're on comments now, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Convener. I'm really glad you asked that question about the preventative work that Angus Alive is doing. I think it goes in so well with the Council's aims of health and well-being, and Angus Alive are providing the people of Angus with these activities to do so. I want to really thank Colin and Ian for the amount of work that they've done over the years. And when you look around the country and you're seeing other places having to close swimming pools and other facilities, lots of facilities, I think Angus Alive has done a tremendous job over the past 2 years to come through this really difficult time. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Proctor, comment?
Thank you, Convener. Just to go back to what Mr. Cargill said earlier about volunteers, the committee should be aware that with the exception of the council directors, 4 appointed directors from the council, the remaining directors on the Angus Alive are all volunteers, give of their time and their talent to do that. And I think they actually are quite questioning and do a good job. They don't take things at face value. They examine every facet. And I do hope that, we continue to go in this way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. Any other comments? No, well, I'd just like to echo what Councillor Devine, Councillor Bell and Councillor Proctor said. I think it's excellent your membership's gone up in the current sort of financial climate. 33% is absolutely excellent. So just keep up the good work, guys, and thank all your staff for what you're doing. Sport's not my ilk, I'm afraid, nor finance, but when you see figures like that of increasing membership, I think it can only be commended. Is there any further comments? No? Okay then, we've got one recommendation and it was to review this, which I think we've done very well. Is the report agreed? Thank you very much and thank you. Okay, we'll go to agenda item number 6 and it's the Tayside Contracts Annual Performance Report 2022-23 and I'd welcome Mr Mark Namara and Mr Dougie Mackay to the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Convener. As Mr Cargill said, we have with us today the annual report from Tayside Contracts for all of their activity across the whole Tayside region for the year 22-23. And as the Convener mentioned, we're joined by the Managing Director, Keith McNamara, and Tayside Contracts Head of Operations, Dougie Mackay. So I'll hand over to Mr McNamara, who will talk the committee through the report.
Thanks very much, Mark. Good afternoon, members. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you today. The report I'm presenting today relates to the financial year 1st of April 2022 to 31st March 23, and as was previously highlighted in relation to Angus Alive, it was a very unprecedented set of circumstances which we all had to live through. We've had the reference to COVID before, and at the start of that financial year, we were just coming out of the COVID restrictions. The conflict in Europe created significant issues in terms of supply chain shortages for us. If I can give you one illustration of that, during the summer of 2022, for a 2-month period, bitumen supply, which is so essential for our construction activities, our road construction and repair activities, it was subject to 90% shortage, so that had a major impact on Tayside contracts. Inflation levels were higher than they've been in the last 40 years, and the cost profile for Tayside contracts was significantly affected by things like diesel, which had gone up by in price by 55%, winter maintenance and salt had gone up by 35%, and street lighting columns went up by 32%, just some examples of some of the challenges that we faced. National trends for things like sickness, absence and employee turnover were also reflected in Tayside contracts, and you'll see from the annual performance report the challenges that had with significantly high levels of these factors as well. The reason why I'm highlighting these challenges is that many of the things that we would have wanted to achieve in our business plan and indeed in our performance indicators were put aside temporarily because of the need to focus on the priorities that we had to deal with. However, despite these significant challenges, there were many successes from Tayside contracts, and I'm grateful for the hard work and dedication of Tayside contracts employees to deliver what we were able to achieve. The financial year we're talking about saw the first full year with all 3 councils in Tayside participating in our Tayside, Tay Cuisine, which is a central food production unit which produces 4.5 million meals per year for all primaries and nurseries across Tayside. That gives a collective saving of £1 million to all 3 councils per year. So the first year went very successfully. School meals was a challenge during the year, again, because uptake from school meals didn't quite reach the level of pre-COVID, but we did notice recovery. There was a school meal action plan instituted, and there was an increase of 14% in average daily meals over the course of the year, which we were very pleased to see the increase coming up. External income for Tayside contracts, i.e. income generated from activities not from our 3 councils, is extremely important to us, and we generated an extra £1.2 million of additional external income during the financial year, which was an increase of 26%. During the year, we also launched our community fund. Obviously, I'm conscious of the discussions previously about volunteering and community work. Our community fund is a fund where we can do things for our local communities or charity groups, whether it be repairing a community facilities car park, or providing a meal service for a community activity, or even signage from our sign shop. Variety of things that we can do. This is funded from our community fund. The community or the charity get the work done for nothing, and the community fund picks up the tab. So straying slightly into this year, we've been able to help 24 local groups within the Angus area with approximately 40% worth of work being done for them, which is just under half of the total spend of £90,000 for the community fund. So I think the elected members in Angus and the communities in Angus have done a fantastic job picking up and taking advantage of that community fund. In terms of specific things for the Angus area, we benchmark nationally across the UK for various services, and we were nominated, our transport services were nominated as one of the most improved finalists in the APSI benchmarking awards. So we're in the top 5 or 6 within the country. The reason why that is of significance to Angus Council is we provide the fleet maintenance service for 370 Angus Council vehicles. And we were also, All Angus Council was with partnering with Tayside Contracts, was nominated for the Roads, Highways and Winter Maintenance Most Improved finalist in the APSE awards. And again, the fact this was a UK award, not just a Scottish award, goes to show the level of dedication, commitment and effectiveness of the services. I think one of the features of Tayside Contracts is the fact that we are able to learn from what's happening in the other council areas and take that learning and transpose it across. An example of that it relates to salt. There's basically two types of salt which are involved in road gritting. One's called marine salt, the other one's called rock salt. Marine salt is roughly double the price of rock salt, but rock salt has, generally speaking, to be stored indoors, which makes it a disadvantage to use rock salt. In Perth and Kinross, colleagues trialled storing rock salt outdoors. It was found to be, from robust analysis, no detriment. That's been transposed to Angus Council, and that could effectively save Angus Council something in the region of £250,000 per year. So a real benefit from trialling something in one area and sharing the knowledge with other areas within Tayside. We also took on additional activity. Angus Health and Social Care Partnership are struggling with their community meals tea service. They asked us to step in and provide that, which we did in pretty short notice, and we're very pleased to report that due to the nature of the services that we provided, that the Angus Health and Social Care Partnership agreed to carry on, and we've been providing the community meals service ever since. In terms of sustainability and climate change, over the last 10 years, our street partnership lighting team have been installing low energy LED bulbs, and we have reduced the consumption within Angus by 63%, the energy consumption by 63%. So that's obviously very positive in terms of carbon, but also very positive in terms of cost reductions as well. Just in conclusion, there's a couple of things that we're needing to work on, because it's not everything is perfect, as I'm sure all organisations will find. So, for example, we're working closely with our Angus Council colleagues in relation to roads maintenance. There are some things that are worthy of improvement, and I think we're working with Angus Council colleagues to look at a more formal partnership approach. This is something which happens within Perth and Kinross through the Roads Maintenance Partnership, and similarly in Dundee City Council, and we think that will help aid joint working between the two. I mentioned the partnership we have with Angus Council for provision of fleet, so that's due to be renewed if approved by the Council in March this year, and as part of that there's a study going into investigating the value of that activity as well. And finally, in terms of the significant financial challenges that we all face, we have a change plan, which is basically a Tayside Contracts transformation programme, where we are set out a series of activities that we're taking forward to reduce the financial burden that Tayside Contracts is experiencing, and we're significantly through that. For 2022-23, we reduced costs by £1.6 million and generated an extra £2.8 million of income. I'll pause there, Convener. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Keith. Councillor Bell, a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. It was really helpful having the briefing session with you last week. That has dealt with most of my questions. I've got one. I'm particularly interested actually around the climate change plan and how challenging that must be when you're so heavily dependent on huge numbers of plant machinery and the materials used for road repairs, for example. I understand you're working with a private start-up around the provision of rock dust, looking at enriching agricultural land, and I just wondered if you could give us an idea of any early returns from that trial, and how that's contributing to your climate change plan, and how you would even calculate that. That would be quite interesting to know. And if there are other opportunities with other organisations where you can have that kind of circular process in place. Thank you.
there are considerable challenges involved in decarbonisation of our fleet, particularly around heavy vehicles. In relation to the rock dust, we're more facilitators than deliverers of that. The rock dust is effectively a byproduct of what we produce at the quarry. So we're working with this private organisation providing them with the rock dust for that then to go out to third parties. So it's not necessarily a benefit directly to Tayside contracts, but we're more than happy to be facilitating that and delivering the benefits of that to others. So in terms of measurement, it's not necessarily an internal measure for us, it's more what's happening out there.
Could I come back? That might be helpful.
Thanks. I'll take that point on board. Councillor Bell will look into that. Thank you.
Thank you both. Councillor McLaren, a question?
Thank you, Convener. I note that Angus Council is moving to rock salt use. My question is the rock salt as effective as the marine salt at low temperatures?
Dougie Mackay, Councillor McLaren, he's far more expert on that than myself.
Yep, thanks, Councillor McLaren. There is no, if you want to say, demonstrated difference between the use of marine salt and rock salt. There's slight difference in purities, as in the marine salt being more pure, but the reality is any of the two salts, when you start getting to temperatures between -5 and -10 degrees, then they start to be less effective. So I think that's where the question comes in round about the effectiveness of salt. But there is nothing that there is no evidence to say that rock salt is any less effective than marine salt.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Speed, a question?
Yeah, thank you, Convener. It was with regards to street lighting. I noticed actually the Dundee partnership, or the Dundee part of the street lighting partnership, was up for an award. However, I have concerns around kind of the amount of challenges there are when you're out and about in the dark in the evening, when there seems to be kind of, kind of particular hotspots or streets that seem to have reoccurring issues with lighting and them being out, making it particularly dark and unsafe. I just wondered if there was, is there issues in terms of carrying out repairs, or is it just that the street columns and lamps themselves are needing replaced? An update in terms of street lighting in Angus would be helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. One of the things that's evident from the annual performance report is there are some more challenges in relation to the street lighting partnership performance within Angus Council area as opposed to the other areas. If there are specific issues around street lights out or dark areas, etc., it'd be very helpful to be notified of them so that obviously action can be taken around them. As I mentioned in my introductory discussion, there have been significant issues around recruitment. That happens in various areas geographically and across various activities. But again, if I may defer to Dougie, who's operationally leading that area, because I think we've had some better signs of recovery from that, if I may hand over to Dougie.
Thanks, Keith. Councillor Speed, I think it's fair to say through 2022-23 there was challenging times within the street lighting, both from a recruitment point of view within Angus Council, if you want to say from the commissioning side of things, and Tayside contracts from the delivery, and that's both with professional staff and those on the ground. So that did impact on, if you want to say, times for repairs and repairs coming through. I'm pleased to say within 23-24, for the first 5 months of information that we've got available, that performance has improved considerably. It's up to the levels and comparable to the two neighbouring authorities. So from that side of things, we're not aware of any particular issues. I am aware that the replacement programme, so for replacement LEDs, that's been completed within Angus, but it doesn't mean that there's not other infrastructure requirements. And I know through the street lighting partnership manager. There have been some requests, if you want to say, into future budgets to give consideration to further investment within the street lighting infrastructure within the Angus area. So 22-23, not a great position, but pleased to say that things have improved. So as Keith has said, if there is anything that's coming up of a regular basis, I would say feed that into the Angus Council sort of access line that follows through with the street lighting partnership manager, and we would take these up.
Okay, Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thank you. We'll take up those particular areas that are occurring or just haven't been fixed yet. What I would say in terms of people reporting, I know it can be quite difficult because they need to then know the actual street lamp number or drop a pin in the map as to where the issue is, and I think that can be quite challenging for some. So yeah, just an additional comment there to finish. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We've got a member in the chamber, Councillor Devine, and then after that we'll go to Councillor Dorn online. Thank you.
Thanks, Convener. I do have a question, but I just wanted to say thank you for your presentation and your report. And I also do appreciate the amount of work you're doing on health wellbeing for your staff, because it's been a very difficult time. And as you're saying, recruitment is difficult, so it puts more pressure on other people. So thanks for that. My other question is, my question is really just, again, a wee bit thing about climate emergency, but it's also about health, and it's on our page 95. I don't know what yours is, but it's the turn it off thing that you had going. I just wondered if you felt that that had been successful, because it's a bit of a bugbear of mine when I see vehicles of all sorts. It's not just the big vehicles, but buses and cars and everything else sitting idling. It is just so bad for the health of our community, especially children. So do you think that worked? And if it did, maybe we can find some way of putting it out there even further. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Devine. I totally agree with you. And it's one of these things, you do the campaign, but you need to do it again and again because people's habits will slip. We did find that our overall fuel consumption performance improved by 3.2%. So it's not absolutely massive, but in view of, as I was saying earlier on, the cost of fuel going significantly higher than inflation, every little helps. So we did get a tangible improvement from that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Councillor Dorn, a question?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to touch on the staffing and recruitment challenges that have been mentioned in the context of the answers to some other questions. And I can see that you are taking steps to support staff. I did wonder if there'd be any other initiatives coming forward as this issue continues in the retention of staff. And also with just a question around recruitment. Is it that you are struggling to find people with the right skills to fill the positions? Are those people available and then taking jobs elsewhere? Is it a mix of the two, just to better understand that situation? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Doran. Yeah, in terms of supporting staff, yeah, there are several initiatives, as the report's highlighted, underway, and we're kind of taking stock of where we are with these before we move on to the next step. So we've had head torch training for managers, which is mental health and how we support our own people. We've had something called Head Start training, which went out to the wider workforce about how they look after their own mental health and well-being. And I think a really important issue for us, as I think I mentioned earlier on, 3/4 of our employees are on the lowest Scottish Government living wage level. So the financial challenges around cost of living are very prevalent. So we've joined something called Viv Up. It's an employee benefit scheme where staff get discounts, and promoting that widely. We've also rolled out mental health first aid training as well for within the organisation, and we're just taking stock of that and seeing where we are with that. We've just ran through our Investors in People employee survey of all our employees, and the results are in and they're being analysed at the moment. And I think as a result of getting the feedback in terms of what our training and the other delivery activities have been carried out, what the outcome of our investor and people survey says, that will inform the next stage for ourselves around that. To answer your question on recruitment, there's a variety of factors there. I think one of the big issues, and it's not a surprise, is public sector pay lags behind the private sector. So again, we are losing people to the private sector. And I think the other issue, which is very prevalent for Tayside contracts, because successive years' pay awards have been weighted towards lower paid people, which obviously there's a huge benefit in that. The issue for that is the differential between the slightly lower and the slightly higher paid individuals gets eroded year on year and year as lower paid, differentiated lower paid pay awards take place. So the erosion of differentials between different grades has caused us a problem. It gets to the stage where colleagues might think it's not worth taking on the responsibility of a higher paid post if there is literally now pennies between different grades. That is a challenge for us, over and above just the general challenge of competing in a very competitive market.
Thank you for that.
Okay, any other questions? I have one, Mr McNamara, and just been at one Tayside contracts meeting. I'm just newly appointed to your joint committee, but you've touched on it a couple of times, and that the Tay Cuisine and the Central Production Unit are now doing meals out with the council. Is there still capacity to increase that, and is your colleagues actively seeking to increase that? Thank you.
Very much so, Convener. I think that was one of the big values of the central production facility, that it operates effectively Monday to Friday, normal business hours, if I can put it that way. There is that opportunity to utilise that asset better by extending the hours of operation, potentially moving into the weekend. So we could potentially, as a very rough figure, potentially double the capacity of meals which we provide with that. I'm conscious this is a public forum, so I maybe won't say too much, but we are very active in conversations with 2 organisations at the moment around potentially providing that service for them.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Comments? No comments? Excuse me, because my screen's just... Okay. Well, I'd just like to thank you both for attending today, and it's good to see all the work that you're doing, and I just realise all the variation in the different services that you all provide. It's also good to see that the primary school meals have increased, surpassing pre-COVID levels, and that the secondary ones are going that way. And I'm also pleased to see that there's a 10% reduction in your absence with stress, depression and anxiety, because that is a big thing, I think, in any organisation. And it's good to see that you're engaging with the staff, and indeed the staff are engaging with the programmes and the facilities that you have got to offer to. Anyone else? No? Okay, we've got the recommendation in front of us. Is the report agreed? Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Keith and Dougie. You don't have to stay, you're welcome to, but I know you're busy, so you can depart if you want. Thank you. Okay, members, we'll go to agenda item number 7, which is the Angus Violence Against Women Partnership Annual Report 2022-23, and we've got Mr Ewan West with us online, who will speak to the report. Thank you, Ewan.
Thank you, Convener. Good afternoon, councillors. Delighted to present the third of the Angus Violence Against Women Partnership, which covers the period from April 22 to March 23. I'm going to just I was informed I had 4 or 5 minutes, convener, so I'm just going to cover some highlights and then happy to take some questions if that's okay. To start off, I think it's important for me as independent chair to recognise the hard work and commitment of all partners who are on the Angus Violence Against Women Partnership. They work incredibly hard to ensure the safety and well-being of women and girls in Angus, and I, as chair, appreciate all of their hard work and dedication. The response over this reporting period is always professional, determined and coordinated, which is really important, and the partnership, and hopefully women and girls who require their services benefit from this approach. So as chair, I think I would just want to mark and highlight the work of the various partners, some examples of which I'm going to talk about as I go through the report. Some key headlines that we've taken into account very much as we've gone forward our work in that period is to listen to the voices of women and children and young people who have unfortunately had some lived experience of violence against women and girls. And we all endeavour to listen and to their views, their experiences, which are very much respected. And over this period, we've tried to utilise that information to shape our policy and practice going forward, which I think is really important. Likewise, I think it's really important that the professionals working within this sphere of work have all the knowledge, skills and support that they need to support victims. And I certainly will talk about training as we go through this afternoon. I think it's also important, and again, we've done this as much as we can, is to make sure that the professionals are very much trauma-informed, and how we react to situations is very much person-centred. And I think some of the feedback that I received through the partners would indicate that that's certainly the route we're going down as much as we can when we're dealing with individuals. And finally, and I'll come back to data shortly, but it's important, and I think we have tried, and we certainly have tried to use evidence and data to measure progress and performance, because I think it's really important that we can reassure not only elected members but others in the wider community that our response to gender-based violence is as good as it can be, and we can always improve. And that's why it's important that we take into account, as we have done hopefully over the supporting period, the evidence and data that comes before us. Just going through the report, I mean, there are a number of key points, but I mentioned knowledge and learning there in my introduction. We have a very effective subgroup, learning and development subgroup, which has developed training significantly over the reporting period. We've made learning more available, hopefully more readily available across the professional workforce. We've enhanced our evaluation process for training, which helps us to identify thematic trends and respond to learning needs of professionals who we encourage to come forward and speak to us about what works well in terms of training, what doesn't work well, and what other areas of training we may be able to deliver. For example, I think a good example of that is around child sexual exploitation and the use of various social media platforms, which unfortunately continues to evolve, and it's important that we try and provide the staff with, or professionals rather, with the tools that they need to be able to address that particular aspect of gender-based violence. So the work that the Learning and Development Subgroup have done and continue to do, and to make professionals aware of all the training opportunities that exist within Angus. I think that's really important, and that over this reporting period, I really do feel that that is an area where we have moved forward significantly. Excuse me. Data collection, I mentioned that earlier, remains a challenge for us. Indeed, although this is coming forward to the present time, the government introduced the most recent Equally Safe strategy just towards the end of last year, and we're awaiting now from them the updated data response that they will require from individual areas. So I suspect that's going to change again going forward. Chief Inspector Fitzgerald, I think, on the call today from Police Scotland, and since Ross came into post, he's been very helpfully providing more local data for Angus now. Unfortunately, it doesn't cover this reporting period, but going forward, it certainly will. And that information that local information rather, that we can get from Ross and his team is absolutely vital to us to get a local perspective on where we need to place our priorities, identify trends, and where we can all work together to address issues that are arising. So whilst it's not reflected in this report, and there was a particular issue in relation to data which is outlined in the covering report that you have, going forward, we need to make sure that excuse me, the national data that's required and the information that Ross can provide, we use that in the best possible way. In terms of what data I do have at the moment, the data that should have been in the report is expected in the next couple of months, and if it's acceptable to members, rather than wait until probably a year's time, I would be happy to have that information circulated to you, so you can see it as quickly as we can. So I can do that and take an action from this meeting to provide you with that data as soon as possible. I'll come back to data just shortly. There's a couple of things I want to mention before I get to that point. You'll see probably in the second half of the report, there is quite a lot of information about what the specialist services. So I'm talking about the Women's Rape and Sexual Abuse Centre, Angus Women's Aid, Angus Council, and others, and what they contribute to the work in respect to gender-based violence. And I think it's absolutely vital that I highlight the very, very good work that these organisations provide in Angus and beyond, but this is specifically in Angus over this reporting period. And there are a number of examples of different aspects of work that they've all undertaken, delivered, and supported victims. And indeed, at the end of the report, there are two particular cases that we've highlighted, which I hope provide elected members with an idea of the complexity of some of the cases that are dealt with, and also how we're trying to be proactive in dealing with cases involving young people. So there's a couple of cases at the end there I hope you find useful. But going back to my point about RASAC and Women's Aid, they do a really tremendous job and have done over the period of this reporting and continue to do so. And they are really, along with Ross's team in Police Scotland, are really the front line of dealing with gender-based violence in all its forms. And as councillors will be aware, it's a very difficult job. It's a very demanding job, but they do so with rigour and tenacity, and without their hard work across Angus, we may not be, I'm not saying we're in a great position, but the response that we provide may not be as good as it might have been. They really are the amount of work that they put in, the dedication of staff, and the time that they've taken with victims is absolutely tremendous. And again, as a chair, I think it's important for me to highlight that to members as well, documenting it in the report. Angus Council Justice Services, likewise, through the Glenclova and the Glenalla projects, continued to offer support to local women, either in terms of statutory measures or voluntary measures, and their work is also, over this period, has been very significant in helping and supporting victims. The Fergus programme, which was developed to support men in desisting from gender-based violence, continues, and that provides an integrated approach to all those involved and having experienced domestic abuse. So again, we're indebted to the staff of Justice Services for providing the hard work that they do. Prevention absolutely is key to reducing.
Ewan, you've gone on to mute.
Pardon, convener. I was just talking there about prevention, and clearly very, very important to prevent gender-based violence before it actually occurs, and or support early intervention and prevent further incidents from taking place. And that is at the core of the work, some of the work that's described in the report, and our work that continues going forward. So that is public information going out there, appeals, 16 days of action, our white ribbon work, and various other individual pieces of work that the partners take forward. And that has to be, and will continue to be, our main tranche of work, is the preventative aspect, speaking to men and boys, but also to the wider community, to bystanders, to make, to try and influence people to report things that they see that they may not otherwise have done, but really to get that message out there. And we've tried to do that over this reporting period, and we continue our efforts to do so going forward. So all in all, I think we continue to try and tackle gender-based violence. Ross's team do so at the front end, and hopefully the other agencies provide support to him and his staff. Likewise, they provide support to these specialist agencies as well. So I think in Angus we're quite well set, and Ross may have a comment on this, but we're quite well set in terms of our coordination and integration across the services, and I hope that provides reassurance to elected members that we are together as a team. We're all trying to do the right things. We do have the same priorities, and hopefully going forward, that will continue to make an impact on the level of gender-based violence going forward. And just towards the end of the report, you'll see there's a list of key priorities for 2023-24. I'll not go through them all, but a couple of them I would point out to you, which we are due to renew our strategic plan in the next few months. So we'll need to have a close view on what our priorities are going to be going forward. We will hopefully achieve our White Ribbon Scotland status, and there's work going on to progress that. We're going to relaunch the Angus Gender-Based Violence Employer Pledge, which didn't get a great response when it was first mooted a few months ago, but there's been quite a lot of work undertaken by staff since then, so that's going to happen in the next couple of months. We're going to improve the level of data we receive, and basically continue to focus on commercial sexual exploitation, as I'm sure you would expect us to do. So a lot of that work has progressed in the period 2023 to this point, but we've still got quite a bit to do. And at that point, I think, Convener, I'll just leave it and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ewan. Councillor Bell, a question. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much, Ewan. I have a huge amount of reassurance and trust in the work that the partnership is doing on this huge public health issue. And I guess I want to start with the case study, Limitless. That had me on the edge of my seat. It mirrors a number of housing cases that I've had to deal with. And the feedback from constituents has been that particularly the police have been amazing during those kinds of situations. And in my experience as well, housing officers have been great and have absolutely recognised issues. So that, for me, is evidence that Equally Safe is being used. You mentioned training, learning and development for our professionals. I know Angus was a pilot area for Equally Safe in practice. Is that still the framework that is being utilised? And also, how well equipped are partners to support any of our frontline staff around vicarious trauma? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Yes, to answer your question, Equally Safe is still the framework that we use. It's obviously the national strategy, and we would not stray from that strategy that's worked pretty well up to now. And as I say, it's just been refreshed at the tail end of last year, and there's not a lot of new aspects to it, but it does reinforce around lived experience, trauma-informed, and also collective leadership and partnership. So that's not something that we would stray from unless there was some real reason to do so. Sorry, can you just remind me what the second part of your question was, Councillor Bell?
I guess it was around how well equipped our partners are in dealing with vicarious trauma in our frontline workers. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's always a challenge going forward, particularly with new staff coming on board. There are rather training opportunities for all staff to receive updated training on trauma-informed practice and similar aspects of work. So we do make it available. I know sometimes it's difficult for staff to be released for training due to resource pressures, but we do have a pretty good attendance at training, those types of training for staff. So it's something that we could need to continue to work at to make sure that new staff, particularly coming on board, have that information and those skills to deal with that, Councillor. If I could probably get some numbers from you. I don't have them to hand just now, but in terms of the numbers who have participated in that training, if that would be helpful.
Thank you, Ewan. I would welcome that. I'd also quite welcome any comment from Ross Fitzgerald on that, because I know the police are often at the sharp end.
Thank you, Councillor, for that. So I can probably just say that Police Scotland does have a real focus on mental health awareness nationally. It's probably come more to the fore over kind of recent years as the impact of kind of trauma and attendance at significant events is kind of impacted upon our staff. So that there's a range of options available within Police Scotland particularly. We clearly have a very tight briefing and debriefing mechanisms with first-line managers and second-line managers, ensuring those good quality conversations happen in the aftermath of attendance and dealing with significant trauma. Aside from that, we have our kind of federation and staff associations, which provide really positive support in support of our kind of organisation's goals as well. From there, we have a well-embedded employee assistance programme, which offers staff affected by trauma free counselling sessions throughout the year as and when they are required. And clearly, you know, a vibrant people and development department which brings in kind of fresh learning from out with agencies, signposts officers to that through various briefing sites, through internal briefing boards, etc. So there's a real range of resources available from a range of different sources for all our staff, particularly those who are in frontline roles, which are kind of at the front end and the sharp end of dealing with trauma on a daily basis. So hopefully that provides some reassurance. But again, I could provide a range of material in support of that answer, just to give you that broader reassurance in due course, if that would be welcome.
Councillor Bell's nodding her head, Ro, so that's fine. Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Devine, question?
Thanks, Convener, and thanks very much, Ewan. This is a full report, which I really welcome. I suppose that, like you, I'm so happy to see so much more being done on the preventative side with the White Ribbon campaign and being taken forward. I was wondering, do you know what kind of number of pledges we've got across Angus at the moment? And also in terms of the 16 days, you say there that there hasn't been as much engagement with community as you might like. Have you got any idea of how that's going to go moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of the number of pledges, I don't have that in front of me right now, but that's something I can get you and make sure that you have that information. In terms of engagement in the community in 16 days, I know it's out with the reporting period we're looking at on this report, but our most recent 16 days of action towards the end of last year, we certainly had that in our mind about how we could engage better with the public and the community. So one of the examples of that was the vigil that we did down at Arbroath at Gayfield Stadium, where I think we had over 50 or 60 people there now. Some of those clearly were professionals, but there was also a number of people from the community who came and also who viewed it online. It was live streamed, and you know, it's that type of engagement that we need to develop going forward. We also had a number of community cafes over that 16 period, drop-in cafes where people could go and speak to professionals on perhaps a more informal basis and get information that they were looking for. So there's a couple of examples during the most recent 16 days that we developed. Now we're just getting feedback now from that 16-day event, and we'll hopefully build on that going forward, because we need to engage as much as we can, as I said earlier, with our community. We need to hear what's going on out there in terms of gender-based violence. Are the services we're providing the right ones at the right time? And that's the type of information that we need to get. But I think our vigil was a good start, and I thank the councillors who came along to that. But we need to build on that. The 60 this year, I'd like to see 200 next year, and build on it and build on it and build on it going forward. And the messages that we give out there about support and how people can be supported are really important.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Councillor Louise Nicholl, question. Thank you.
Thanks. On pages 124 and 25, funding is mentioned regarding the 2 adult support roles. Given how vital these roles are, how confident are you that further funding can be secured to make both these roles permanent?
Just give me a second. I just need to get to the right page on my report. Can you just help me, Councillor, with what heading that has come under, and I'll get to it quicker.
Seconds.
Page 16 on your report.
Page 16 of yours, Ewan.
Thank you. Is that under the RASAC section, Councillor?
Yes, it is, Ewan.
Yeah. So your question was, sorry, I've just got it now. Can you just repeat your question again, Councillor? Thanks.
Certainly. I was just saying, given how vital these roles are, how confident are you that further funding can be secured to make both these roles permanent?
Ewan, can I just interject? Kirsty Lee's actually going to answer that, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. You're right, they're really important roles, but they are third sector roles and they're with RASAC. And, you know, a key role of the partnership is to support our third agency partners in funding bids and providing them with good quality information through that partnership about the impact they're having more widely. What we don't have through the partnership at the moment is the ability to fund and support services. So it's very limited in terms of an Angus partnership and what we can achieve. However, I know there is work ongoing through COSLA and Scottish Government to look at the ability for partnerships to come with a budget that will help support, you know, some of these agencies to provide good quality services. You know, in line with the third sector challenges that exist, you know, across all of our services, it's the short-term funding and therefore short-term roles that create instability in the service. So we absolutely acknowledge on RASAC's behalf, as we do on Women's Aid's behalf, that is really difficult for them. We will do everything we can as a council, so I can speak on behalf of Angus Council and as a partnership to support them with that funding, but it's not within our gift to secure those posts more permanently. So I hope that's helpful.
Peter, if I could just add to that from what Kirsty's just said, I mean, when I'm getting an opportunity, when I do to speak to Scottish Government, I'm always, one of my points is, can we get away from the short-term funding to slightly longer-term funding, which would give us some assurance going down, you know, further down the road that this, we can have maybe a 3-year plan instead of a year-to-year plan. And I think that would help lots. I've not seen evidence of that happening yet, but something that we keep asking and keep making the point about. So if that's for some assurance for you, Councillor, we do keep banging that drum.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doran, a question?
Yeah, thank you. It's great to see that the secondary schools are signed up to the Equally Safe at School programme. I think in the reports next year, it would be really brilliant to see a bit more about the activity that's taking place around that and in schools, because I can see it's reported on that a survey's taken place this year, but it'd be good, really great for us as councillors to see actually what's going on. And my question relates to some of the preventative measures that you're kind of working on. And I wondered if or what support there might be for other people who are active in the community but in a more informal way, and how they might be able to support the work that you're doing, maybe signing to where they should like send people to, or what steps they might take, or even opening up some of the training that might be available to them as well. I'm thinking of community councils, but also people who may organise and run sports activities and other clubs for groups of a kind of relevant age. I'm thinking mostly of young people within this kind of context. And I also just want to mention, I think last time the report was brought to us, I mentioned and discussed the important context of kind of cyber crime in this area as well. And I see that's mentioned in the context of the report that the information that Police Scotland have put together. So again, it would be good to see a bit more next year about what is taking place around that area as well. But my question relates to kind of the people in our communities who I'm sure would like to support this, and what opportunities there might be for them.
Thank you, Councillor. We'd be happy to engage with any community council or the other examples that you gave there, Councillor, to provide them with information. That's something I think we should I'll take an action away and see how we can develop that. I think we've got to get that message out there that we're happy to do so. We're happy to engage with anyone. In terms of training, there may be some training events that would be very suitable for people to come on. Some might not be quite as suitable because they're designed for professionals, but we do have some general training that sometimes happens. So yeah, or we could set up something quite specific for organisations such as community council. So we're happy to engage, the partnership's happy to engage as widely as possible. And in relation to the secondary schools, equally safe, then absolutely that'll be reported on in the next report once we've got that survey detail back, and also give a bit more information on cyber security. So I think, or cyber issues, and I think it can link in with Ross. I'm sure between us we'll be able to give a fairly detailed update on where that's sitting. There's a bit of a moving feast, Councillor, on cyber issues because it moves so quickly, but absolutely be able to give you a snapshot and detail on that going forward.
Thank you, that's great.
Thank you both. Councillor Speed.
Thanks, Convener. Ewan, I just wondered if you had any data on the number of cases where perhaps the victim and her children actually remain in the home, and it's the abuser, it's the perpetrator that has to move out. Now, I know on some occasions that would not be appropriate at all, or even possible because of the nature of the abuse and the control, and indeed the trauma, if that, the home is where the abuse has taken place, which it most often is. But I just wondered, it is the women and the children that have to go through that kind of, that fleeing, that kind of unsettling of home life, school life often. And I just wondered, how long do they actually have to wait before a permanent solution is found? So 2 questions kind of in there.
2 good questions. In terms of the data, I don't have that in front of me, Councillor, but listen, I'll endeavour to get that for you. I think each individual case has to be taken separately in terms of where people go and when. So to give a general answer to that is quite difficult. I think what I would say is that professionals, and probably Ross's team who are probably present at that moment, are really experienced in making that judgment, or help people make that judgment as to when and who should perhaps or may have to leave a home. And clearly it adds to the trauma if the victim and children have to leave, because although maybe that's where the abuse is taking place, but that's their home at the end of the day. So it's a massive balance and for the professionals to make in conjunction with the victim and what's best for everybody at that time. So I think it's just not easy to give a generic answer to that one, Councillor, but I think if you can be reassured that, and I am when I speak to Ross and his team and other specialists, that I think they get it right more often than they get it wrong, and a lot more often, in fact. And the number of repeat offences, I think the last time I had data, Ross could confirm this, in Angus is reduced. So and the number of repeat people, women who are going to Marach, has reduced in Angus. So hopefully that's some reflection on the fact that we're maybe getting it right when we get in there and respond to incidents. I'll certainly see if I can get some data for you on the first part of your question.
Okay, thanks, Ian.
Ross, do you want to come in now before I go to Councillor Proctor?
Convener, if I could, that'd be grand. It's just to give that reassurance to Councillor Speed. I mean, I would reiterate Mr. West's position that each case is taken on a case-by-case basis. But in terms of that kind of broader reassurance, what I can say is that right from the initial time of report, the safeguarding of those who are the victims of those kind of crimes is absolutely central to every decision that's taken, both by the attending officers at the time, by our domestic abuse liaison officers who are then liaising with the victims in the aftermath, and also in terms of our information sharing with partners. So I guess to touch on some examples, you know, there are many examples where it's absolutely appropriate to make an arrest and thereafter seek court conditions to prevent that offender for returning to the family home, for example, to provide some of those kind of immediate kind of bits of support and distance that are required. In other occasions, it may be the case that we seek emergency accommodation, which may be supported by civil orders, for example, around non-harassment orders and other kind of such things that can be got through the courts. So there are an absolute range of options available to us, and each and every one is explored in terms of safeguarding victims. In terms of the children that you mentioned, what I would confirm as well is that in every instance of domestic violence that we attend, a vulnerable persons database entry is submitted, and that's our conduit for sharing information between ourselves and partners in social work and other involved agencies. When there are children within the home, those children's details are fully submitted with that referral to make sure that any additional child protection risks are front and centre in terms of our collective thinking. And again, Mr. West is absolutely right. The numbers of repeat victims are decreasing, and that comes down to a real focus on safeguarding right across the partnership in terms of, you know, victim-centred approach. What are victims asking for? What services are required at that time? And those services being sustained until we are absolutely satisfied that the risks have been mitigated as fully as they possibly can be. So hopefully that provides that reassurance. Convener, if you wouldn't mind me just touching on Councillor Dorn's update as well, if that's okay. I've had mention of the kind of community council, so just to provide a wee bit of reassurance that we are doing our level best across Angus to make sure that our police representation at community councils is an improving picture. And we've kind of sustained that through kind of earlier questions and comment through earlier scrutiny committees. So there is a readily available conduit from the partnership into community councils that I'm sure we could exploit next year in kind of in partnership with other members of the Violence Against Women Partnership. So there is a real strong links there that we can seek to use. And you know, lastly around cyber, I guess there's two parts of cyber-enabled crime that are of particular concern just now. One is that kind of peer-on-peer offending, so the inappropriate messaging and sharing of images that occurs, and we see spikes of that around, you know, early to mid-teenagers. So a real focus on how we educate in terms of online safety and the ramifications of those kind of behaviours, and changing the culture around that kind of communication is really at the front of our thinking. And the other aspect of that is perhaps the more organised offending that happens in terms of targeting people around kind of crimes such as sextortion, for example, where images are shared and then messages received seeking cash, which can have a huge kind of psychological impact upon the victim. So I suppose just to give you that little bit of extra information around where our focus on cyber-enabled crime is just now, those two areas are fundamental to what we're trying to tackle.
Thank you. Councillor Proctor, a question.
Thank you very much, Convener. I've just one for Ewan, really. Ewan, you mentioned earlier on about you know, engaging with other agencies, with other groups. Are you aware of the groups that are available to get involved with for service members who be living in the community and veterans, such as SAFA and various others, which I'm quite happy to be a conduit for you to engage with them if you haven't already done so. And lastly, I'd just like to say to Chief Inspector Fitzgerald, thanks for the comment about the community council, but certainly in my ward it tailed off a wee bit since the beginning of the year. But Ewan, the question.
Thanks, Councillor. I'm not aware actually we've hunt with those organisations. So if you're able to put me in contact with them, Councillor, I think that would be again another area where we could develop a relationship in terms of this aspect of work. So yeah, I'd be happy to get that information from you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Questions? Comments? No comments. Councillor Dorn.
Thanks. It was just a quick one to say, yeah, we've noted, we've seen in Moneypeep and Sidlaw, we've certainly seen an increase at the community councils of attendance from the community police officers. So that's been great and it's really helpful, and they've been distributed some of the information. So seeing some of this activity and the work that's going on, particularly around like the key kind of the 16 days of action and other things coming through those channels as well would be really great. So thank you for those comments on that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, there's two recommendations for this committee at 1.1. The ones at 1.2 are for Angus Council on the 8th of February. Do we agree this report? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Inspector Fitzgerald, or Chief Inspector Fitzgerald, and Ewan West for your attendance today, and Kirsty as well, all for your input. Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 8 is the internal audit activity update, and Mrs. Wiley joins us. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. This report is the update on the progress with the plan and also where we are with the implementation of recommendations from internal audit and counter fraud work. And I'm also asking today for approval around some changes that I want to make to the 23-24 plan. If I take you to page 150, there are a couple of things there that I just want to draw to your attention. First of all, at 3.8, just to say that the initial job sharing arrangement with Dundee City Council for my post has now been agreed that will be continuing as a permanent arrangement, and that formal documentation is currently being prepared around that these arrangements. The second thing is really just an update on information around the resources within the team, which are the reason why I'm bringing a change to the plan to you today. We'd previously reported a vacancy in the internal audit team to you due to a retirement, but since the 18th of December, we now have a second full-time auditor post that's vacant due to the person who was in that post moving to another job within the council. That's obviously significantly impacting on our ability to deliver the plan as it currently stands, and there are a few things that I'm proposing to do to sort that out. First of all, we will seek to mitigate the impact by using some of the general audit support from our outsourced contractor. As you know, that tender was out recently, but we now have a completion to that, and the contract has been awarded to Assets, who were our previous provider of that service. And we're in early stages of conversation with them around what they might do for us. We'll also have a recruitment exercise, which is currently just at the early stages of beginning in terms of filling these 2 vacant posts. But if I take you then to page 155, I will run through just what I'm proposing to do with the plan. I'm sorry, I'll get there in just a second. So there are 8 pieces of work that I would like to move into the 24-25 plan. There's 1 piece of work that I would like to take out of the plan, and I'm proposing that in addition to the areas that Assets have already been involved in and the IT audits, that I would also ask them to undertake the risk management audit. The reason for that being that risk management is something that I particularly have to make comment on in my annual opinion, and I've tried to make these changes so that my opinion in total will be able to be provided later in the year. And I'm comfortable that I will be able to do that if these changes are made. So the item that I want to take out of the plan is place-based investment programme. There was a report in October that went up to the P&R committee, which would provide you with some assurances around that, which is why I feel that I can take that item from the plan. and I'm proposing to take the following items into next year: Tay Cities Deal Project Review, External Placement Children, Self-Directed Support, Purchase Ledger Processing, Contract Management Procedures, Procurement, Housing Void Management, and Collaboration and Partnership Work. Now, some of these we might have postponed anyway. As you know, we quite often at the end of the year have a couple of things that we haven't managed to do for various reasons. And so there are a couple of these where people have already asked us if we could do the pieces of work later because they're in the process of changing things and they would rather that we came in after the changes to make sure that they're working properly. One of those areas is housing void management, which I know that members are keen for us to take an audit on. But one of the things that we've added to the plan is an audit around housing void data recording, because that is an area where we can do the audit now and that would add value to the service. So that's the areas that I want to change in the plan. And as I said, I'm confident that I can still provide my opinions later in the year if we make those changes to the plan. In terms of what we're reporting today, we're reporting on continuous auditing. And in terms of payroll, we're providing comprehensive assurance from October through to December. There weren't any errors identified in the testing that's been undertaken. We do have 2 queries regarding national insurance numbers that still need to be finalised, and I will bring a further report on those once we've got an answer to these queries. And in terms of creditors' duplicate payments, we're given substantial assurance from the period from October to November. There were 2 duplicate payments identified in October, totalling just over £23,000, and 2 in November, totalling just under £1,000, and we'll have 1 further small payment of £32 that's still under investigation. Recovery action is in progress for these. I realise usually when we bring these, they're very small amounts. In this case, we do have 1 invoice that was for £23,000 or just over that. The reason that duplicate payment arose was because the invoice number for that transaction was longer than the space that the system had for that to be input, and when it was input the second time, a different part of the invoice number was used instead of the one that had been used the first time round, so the system didn't recognise that it was the same invoice. Further guidance either has been or will be is about to be issued to the processing team so that they know what to do if that arises again in future. And the final section of the report is the information on the outstanding actions. You'll see we'll have a number there that have gone overdue. I think a lot of them had 31st December dates, and the reason they've gone overdue is just because around about that time people were not getting in touch, and then we also had we were not able to update some of the people who had asked for extensions before I had to prepare the information for this report. So I'm sure that those overdue items will have extended dates when we come to report again on this at the next meeting. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any questions, members? No. Comments? No comments? Okay. Councillor Speed?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I really just wanted to comment to say that, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned by these proposals and extending these dates, especially considering some of the services that was mentioned there. I just wanted to share that with the rest of the committee that, yeah, I think that it is concerning. And it would be good to hear just what the impacts could be, particularly around the children's external placements, SDS, housing. You know, within that batch, there's quite a lot of key areas of service there that I feel that we do need to be pushing forward with sooner rather than later.
Mrs. Wiley, do you want to come back in again?
Yeah, just to say I understand your concern, and we will take these forward as the first items that we undertake when we move into the 24-25 plan. It may still be going forward that there is capacity to bring some of these in. It might depend on when we're able to fill the vacancies and also the experience of the people who come into the vacancies. So if we can bring some of these forward, we will, and we will take them forward in 24-5 as the first items rather than towards the end, unless there's a good reason for not doing them at a certain time.
Councillor Speed, you want to come back?
I mean, probably would want to hear if others around the table are content just to agree. No.
I have to say, and I think I certainly speak for some members of the committee, there's certainly been concerns over quite a number of months about the number of housing voids. And I'm not sure, for me, that should be, I know they're going through a service review, I get that. But I think if we're not going to get an update from another source on housing voids regularly and the numbers and to be seeing them reducing, then I think we should be continuing with a housing void review. But I mean, obviously it's what the rest of the committee think. I'd certainly welcome your views. Mr. Armstrong, of course.
Yes, thank you, Convener. And I think the committee's concerns about the deferral of a number of audit reports is heard loud and clear. And I think Cathy and her team and other members in the leadership team would share that. But I think, as Ms. Wiley said, she really is presenting to the committee what, with the resource that she presently has at her disposal and the areas of risk that she's presently considering, she's advising the committee as to where she thinks the best use of her capacity and her team's capacity is just now. And she's also given assurances that those areas of audit that have been deferred by what in essence is potentially as little as kind of 10 weeks, that they will be first on the list going forward. And I accept that the committee are uncomfortable with aspects of that, and I think many officers are aware of the areas of concern that members have around areas of council service, and these are areas that Ms Wiley and her team will pick up.
Thank you, Mr Armstrong. Councillor Proctor.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I mean, I take cognizance of what Mrs Wiley and what Mr Armstrong have said, and I do understand, you know, you can only get a pint of a pint pot. But like you, I mean, I do have concerns about the number of housing voids, and probably like Councillor Speed, some of the issues. But I think we've got the assurance with that, and we've just got to accept that and just monitor it and see how things go, and hopefully that the void situation improves.
Anyone else? Councillor Devine.
I think we've said several times that voids are high on the agenda for the housing department, and they can only do what they can do with the staff they've got and the time they've got, but it is absolutely vital that we improve that situation. And I know it is high on the agenda. Whether we get stats or not, they are working on it.
I think we do need stats, though, because I have asked, and members have asked, on numerous occasions, and I haven't yet seen figures for voids or improvement in voids and reductions in it. So I think I'm quite happy Councillor Gregg, I'm quite happy to agree this report just now, but I can assure this committee that if I don't see figures for housing voids and improvements in certain things, I will bring a motion to this committee to have something on housing voids. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would have to agree. Time and time again, it's been asked for figures with relation to voids, but the financial loss, how many voids there physically are, and we keep being told by officers, we're working on it, we're working on it, we're working on it, and yet again it's being pushed back and pushed back. I appreciate what Mrs Wiley has said and what Mr Armstrong has said, but at the same time we keep asking as elected members, and we keep asking, and we are not getting the information. this needs to be put to a big high priority. It's not just about the figures, it's the people that are in the social housing as well, the people that are in our council houses that are having delays in repairs, that are waiting for properties with all the different voids. It's not just about what we're wanting, we're trying to act on behalf of our residents and our constituents as well. So this needs to be given a higher priority, and I would completely agree with you, Convener, that, that we should bring a motion forward and we should bring housing into the Scrutiny Audit Committee.
And I will discuss that with members before the next meeting. Thank you, Councillor Gregg. Mrs Wiley.
Yeah, it was just to say I will make sure that the housing void data recording piece of work that we've added to this, which we felt would help to move things forward, I'll speak again with my team and try and move that sooner so that it comes to you as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Mrs Wiley. Anyone else? Mr Speed.
It was just a comment, Convener.
Absolutely, carry on.
Yeah, and it was just to really kind of thank colleagues for coming in, who share the same concerns, and just I'm sure we'll all take you up on that offer to bring a motion, should we need to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On that basis then, is the report agreed? Okay, thank you. Go to agenda item number 9, the detailed risk reporting to the Scrutiny Audit Committee. Mrs Wiley again, thank you very much.
Thank you. This is the report where you get the opportunity to get a bit more of a deep dive into the individual risks within the corporate risk register. And the risk today is IT resilience and cyber attack business continuity. Before I hand over for that to be undertaken, the other thing that we're asking for today is just confirmation of what the risk to come to the next committee would be. The programme is agreed in advance, as you know, but if you look at section 3, you'll see that the risk that should be coming to the March committee was around the National Care Service, and because of the situation nationally with that risk has not been articulated and expanded within the corporate risk register. And so at section 4 at 4.3, there's a table of the other risks within the corporate risk register that weren't included in this year's programme. 2 of those have been to the committee in previous years. 2 of those are currently sitting scored at the same as their target. And so we're proposing that the other one, which is performance management, which has never been discussed at committee before and which is currently sitting with a risk score above its target score, would be the one that we would bring to the March committee. And it's just to get either confirmation for that, or if you think that one of these other risks would be better, coming to agree which one it would be. So I can hand over now to Andrew Howe to undertake the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs Wiley.
Thank you, Convener, and good afternoon, members. I'll provide a brief update on the IT resilience and cyber attack risk. So we've seen a significant increase in cyber activity over the last year, and there's still a significant risk relating to cyber attacks. They're increasingly common, and in particular within government and public sector organisations. They're targeted regularly, and in particular there's been several high-profile attacks over the last few years. Our users are no longer solely working for Angus Council, no longer solely working in Angus Council buildings, and many more mobile devices are used to access council services. This has widened the scope for cyber attacks. Also, the delivery of many of our core systems has shifted from on-premise infrastructure to an externally managed, often referred to as cloud-based model. This model also increases our threat vectors as we see more and more services delivered over the internet and not solely through our corporate network. Within Angus Council, we take a risk-based approach to cybersecurity, and we have a dedicated and skilled team who continually review threats and countermeasures. There's an obvious focus on technology to mitigate against cyber threats, but also an increasing focus on staff awareness and training, and ensuring we have robust processes when it comes to the design, delivery and management of all IT services. With the delivery model shifting to fully managed services from external suppliers, there is now a real focus on what I would call supply chain cybersecurity. That's really focusing on ensuring our key suppliers have robust cybersecurity mitigations in place. I can provide the committee assurance that considerable effort is made to adequately mitigate against cyber attacks, following the National Cybersecurity Centre's best practice guidance and guidelines, focusing on technology, processes, staff awareness and external supplier management. That said, the risk remains very high and there is also a focus on business continuity and incident management in the event of a serious cyber attack. Happy to take any questions from members.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No. Councillor Bell, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. I attended cyber risk and resilience training through the NHS last week, and it's fair to say it gave me the heebie-jeebies. I just wondered if there was maybe an opportunity to do some focus training for elected members. I'm probably happy to share with you the slide package that we got, if you were interested to see that. But yeah, it certainly helps to bring things into sharp focus so that we know we're asking the right questions and we can give the appropriate level of scrutiny in future. Thanks.
Sure, thank you very much for the question. We actually have something planned for elected members this year. It's probably quite similar to what was delivered to the NHS. It's delivered in conjunction with the NCSC, so probably quite similar, and we'd be delighted to do that for you this year.
Anyone else? Councillor Devine.
I just wanted to thank you, Andrew, for the briefing this morning, which was very helpful and did give me some sense of contentment, if we can, because everything seems to be moving so quickly, and to keep up with it, or in fact try to get ahead of it, must be incredibly difficult. So thanks for all the work you're doing there.
Yes, and I'd just like to echo, Andrew, what Councillor Devine said. It was very informative and put my mind at rest for going forward for technology and all the support that we do get from your IT colleagues. It's much appreciated. Anyone else? Any comments? Now, I think Mrs. Wiley's looking for an agreement that performance management would be discussed at a future meeting. Do we agree with that before we agree the report? Yes. And we've got the recommendations for this report then. There are two. Do we agree? Okay, thank you very much. Members, we'll move on to agenda item number 10 now, the corporate risks and risk management. And again, it's Mrs. Wiley. Oh, sorry, it's Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you, Convener. Good afternoon, elected members. So this is the regular report that comes to Scrutiny and Audit with the risk register and associated detail around any movements around corporate risks. As the report highlights, the whole corporate risk register is presently being reviewed in accordance with and in conjunction with Zurich Municipal, our insurers. We're looking also at our risk appetite framework, and it's intended to conclude that work early in the current calendar year and to bring that to a future committee of scrutiny and audit. In terms of the risk matrix and assessment that you've got in front of you, and I guess the key things to note in terms of risks that have moved since you previously considered that, they're detailed at the top of page 167. So a reduction in the risk score in relation to legislation, a result of a kind of new corporate system that we've put in place in terms of assessing legislation and ensuring that consultations are undertaken in accordance with that. And then under B, the removal of the COVID-19 risk, which has now been managed at a kind of at an individual directorate level. So, and also has been mentioned at previous committees, the ongoing monitoring closely of the development of the National Care Service, and again that would be incorporated within the corporate risk register if it's deemed that that's something that the council needs to be mindful of. So the report and the appendix are attached for your information, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? No? Any comments? No comments. Two recommendations again then. Is this report agreed? Thank you very much. And the final item, agenda item number 11, is the Corporate Governance Action Plan updates. And I think Mr. Cargill is going to talk to this one. Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you, Convener. This report provides an update on the key corporate actions from our governance work that we do annually. There's four appendices which contain the bulk of the information and the detail. Appendix 1 relates to the annual governance statement that goes into the annual accounts. Appendix 2 has the Scrutiny Audit Committee annual report action plan actions in it, and we've started picking up the best value actions from the main best value report back in 2022, and also the annual thematic reports that will come forward, so that we keep track of progress with any improvement work that's coming out of those pieces of work. In terms of there's a few. You'll note that there's a few reds within the appendices, so I'll just run through these quickly. You'll see also within the narrative in section 3.2 we're looking for some extensions of time around completion of these. So on the governance statement actions, there's two that I have to say have been there for some time that members will probably recognise as well. What I would say around these to give assurance is that they are now, both these actions are now well advanced. There's a proposal that's been fairly well developed now in terms of plans for the adequate storage of archived documents going forward, and there'll be a report coming to P&R Committee in the not too distant future to appraise members on that one. So there has been a lot of work put into that, and it's just a case of bringing it together now. And similarly with that end-to-end process of assessing, billing and payments for social care, huge efforts going into process mapping and design of systems and such like around that. So the action plan around that is well advanced, and I think there's actually an audit being carried out on the updated process as we speak. These are both well in hand. Moving down the page in terms of the actions from the Scrutiny Audit Committee self-assessment work, again, there's a couple of actions there that have been around for a bit of time: the risk appetite and the service risk registers. The risk appetite one, it's the risk resilience safety team who have been diverted onto other things like storms and such like, which has really interrupted the work on the plan to do around risk appetite, but it's still high on their agenda and will be progressing over the next sort of 5 or 6 month period. Service risk registers are well advanced. There's a couple that just need to be closed out, so we should be able to do that fairly soon now. If there's a concerted effort on that, we can get that one signed off and closed out. The other two actions around the independent audit appointment was something that came out of last year's discussions, and Cathy and I were both sort of tasked with going and exploring that a bit further. So we've done some initial work on that, and we can update at the self-evaluation session in a bit more detail, but we've still a bit more to do, and we can feed that back at the session. Private meetings with audit was really something that came out of the new SIPFA guidance 2022 that we brought to committee last year, which was really good practice guidance that there's an opportunity for members to meet privately away from officers if there's any matters that audit would wish to appraise members on away from officers. So we'll put something in place for that. We've had some discussions around that, and I think possibly one annual meeting on that just before the accounts annual sign-off would appear to make the best sense when to have that. So if there's anything coming out of that audit work, then members could be appraised at that stage. We're requesting extensions for these items. The best value actions in appendices 3 and 4. In appendix 3, which is near the bottom of the papers, we'll just scroll down. There's a couple of red actions in there that we'll just give a wee bit more explanation on. There's one at the top of page 212 of the papers, which relates to really, it was something that came out of the original best value audit in 2022, which was around the health and social care partnership, ensuring that I suppose the strategic plan that was emerging was deliverable in financial terms, so trying to join up what we're actually doing in practice on the ground with the money that's available to deliver it. So there's still, as I understand it, there's still a bit of work going on around that to join these two bits together, but from the update from Sandy Berry, which is the narrative in the latest note, they're working on that during February 2024, so that should be completed fairly soon. And then the final one, just to update on, is on the page 215, which is around our performance-led programme, which we have made good progress on the early stages of our pledged programme. Stages 3 and 4 of that programme were what was flagged up as part of the best value audit, that they wanted to see more pace on that. Since that time, we have done a fair bit of work on the stage 3 bits of our pledged work, which has been around, developing dashboards of service level information and having more visibility around the data that services use or could be using. So it's work in progress, but we're starting to use the Power BI tool to make that more user-friendly, make the data better to interpret and such like. So there's good work going on that. We intend to do a similar thing with the council plan performance indicators. So they were, we signed them off last year, and there'll be an update on that this year again. But once we get through that, then I think we'll try to create a dashboard so that we can start reporting that to members and officers a bit more regularly. We have also done a fair bit of work on the development of an Angus data project, which we're hoping to take forward. And that's the key point here, I think, really, that we'll have. That work will take a fair bit of time. There's 5 big work streams involved in it as we've developed it, and these will be kicking off fairly soon. But it's quite a long roadmap, and we're talking about being, broadly 5 years away, 2029 till we complete that. So that's stage 4. Well, once we have that data project in place, that will take us towards that stage 4 ambition, if you like, as part of our pledged programme, which is really taking us into using data for data analytics, predictive analytics, kind of predicting the future based on what we know from the past information. And there's a slight mismatch between that completion date, 31st of March 2028, and the stage 4 proposal in comparison to what we're saying on the data project. The reason for that is really that we would hope to be embarking on that stage 4 work whilst we're developing that data project, and we wouldn't want to see us wait on stage 4 until the data project is complete in 2029. So there'll be tests of change, and there'll be progress during that period. So we'd like to think that by 31st of March 2028, we will have made good progress on stage 4 of the pledged programme as well. So hopefully that gives a bit of an explanation as to the ones that are drifting a little bit, and but happy to take any questions from members.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cargill. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Convener. With reference to page 207 of the combined papers, that's marked as red, that you're asking for an extension for the adequate storage of archived documents. Can I assume that that is literally just finding somewhere to put pictures and objects and things like that? So I can see you're nodding your head there. So why has, if we grant the extension, why has it taken 5 years from 3rd of June 2019 with the extension to the 30th of June 2024, 5 years to find somewhere to house pictures? Now, I know there was COVID, and to be quite frank, like a lot of the public, including myself, I'm tired of hearing COVID being used as an excuse for delaying things. Even without the extension, it's still 4 years to find somewhere to go through to do that. So I can't grasp why it's taken that long to do that. So I'm hoping you're able to explain that and explain the reasoning for the extension of this to bring it up to the 5-year mark. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Gregg. I'll do my best to give you some assurance around that. It's quite a large issue, actually, that we've had building up for years. So we'll have a number of buildings that have archives and collections in them. So there's the yard in Forfar, and there's the Mart in Forfar, and we also have the Hunter Library in Rosteneth, which is just outside Forfar. So they contain the majority of the materials. There are other materials that are generally spread around other museums and library buildings that Angus Alive are charged with keeping a catalogue on and making sure the catalogue's kept up to date. So there has been, I think it'd be fair to say, when Angus Alive inherited that information to look after it on our behalf, it was not in the best order, and it needed a fair bit of work to look at what was there, assess it, look at it, and then get it into that catalogue. So Angus Alive are still working through that detail in terms of exactly what we'll have. And we've really had to look at the overall position from the property perspective. So I've had to engage property colleagues to look at all the available properties across Angus to see what might be, a suitable solution for, basically consolidating what we have in all those different buildings and basically coming up with a proposal that can serve the council well for the long term, really. And there was also a number of other, I think probably diversions in the conversation as we've thought through some of that, including at one stage through working with Angus Alive, we had considered about having a multifunctional Angus Heritage Resource Centre, and there was a big brief that was pulled together on that. And to be quite honest with you, I think that created a bit of a diversion, because we thought we'll apply for external funding through Heritage Lottery funding and such like, and that has really never come to fruition. And I think the ambitions for that project were probably overly ambitious, if I'm being honest. We were talking about figures that were like 12 to 15 million pounds for a purpose-designed facility that would store all the archives and do much more. So as a council, obviously, we're really not in that position to be building those kind of facilities at the moment in the current financial position. So we've had to really park that, and it has been a divergence, and concentrate on what we do have, what buildings might be suitable, do an assessment on those buildings, albeit high level. But we've gone through that process now with support from property colleagues, architects and such like, and we've narrowed the list down to a number of buildings. We've now carried out an options appraisal, and we're really at the point now where we're kind of dotting I's, crossing T's on the options appraisal and the report that would be brought forward to committee with a proposal that will be, set us in good stead as a council for a long period of time, where we can have, good storage facilities for what we've got, but also room for expansion for the future as well, so that when we do get more information that we're duty bound to store, we've got a place to keep it, and it's in good order as well. So I don't disagree, and it's one that I'm absolutely keen to push forward and move on. As I say, we are almost there now, and get it over the line and move on. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you both. Councillor Bell.
Thank you. A wee follow-up, Gordon, if you don't mind. Obviously, we can't put precious artefacts into a shed. Of the options that you're looking at, will they require investment in terms of temperature control and possibly fabric improvements to keep it wind and watertight? Thanks.
Short answer is yes, absolutely. We will need to, some of the artefacts and such like are fairly valuable, and they've got, roots in Angus and they belong to Angus, so we need to protect them, look after them, and we've got a duty in terms of our public records, obligations to do that. So therefore, you're right, we need to have a building that's fit for purpose. It's also a building that needs to be accessible to the public. We want people to go in and be able to look at the history of Angus and the things that we do store and collect. And it also needs, for certain pieces of, history, papers and such like, that there needs to be that kind of temperature control, environmental conditions that are just right for it, So finding the right building at the right cost in the right place is not that easy, but we have gone through that process now, and I think we're coming out with an answer that we'll present in the not too distant future. Okay.
Councillor Proctor, question?
Thank you, Convener. Just to kind of follow up on what Councillor Bell said, I and I just got to ask Mr. Cargill. I mean, we are talking about an Angus archive, basically, for both artefacts and paper stored documents. It's not just a case of a few odd pictures. I've been in the shed down in Forfar, and as a museum professional, semi-retired, I do find that the storage situation where some of these artefacts are held in, you know, not in good order at all. And I just want to ask him, you know, to confirm what you said about looking for a suitable place. Everything will be stored together and easily accessible.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Proctor. Yeah, that's exactly what we're aiming for. That would be a consolidation of all the archives and collections, the paper and the artefacts in the one place, so that we can, you know, have suitable access for folks, and hopefully we can improve that access. It does also include, we'll have the facility at the Hunter Library at Resteneth at the moment as well, where there's a lot of historical documents in that facility at the moment. Angus Alive, as part of their business plan last year, had declared that they, you know, were keen to, from their operational perspective, they were keen to come out of that and consolidate as well. So it would include that in the equation as well, Councillor Proctor, so that basically everything comes together in one place.
Okay, Councillor Gregg?
Thank you, Convener. Just a question just on one of your answers. I think it was Councillor Bell. You mentioned access for the public, but this is for adequate storage. So surely that's where, in my mind, everything would be stored, because when the public want to see them, then that's why they go to one of our museums.
It's a bit of a combination. For example, at the moment, Hunter Library has public access, so you can book an appointment and you can go there and you can do, you know, research into history of Angus, family history, that kind of thing. So there is a public access service provision at the moment in Angus. So it would basically allow a similar level of service that we have as per the Hunter Library, but in a different location.
Councillor Proctor, is it a question or a comment?
Yeah, thanks very much, Convener. Just to go on from Councillor Gregg's question, there are certain people who are studying certain topics, and they want to have a look at artefacts or maybe documents which are not on public display. And I've got the same thing along in the Black Rocks Museum, and what we're trying to replicate here is so that people, these students, can actually, you know, have access and see these artefacts under a proper controlled environment, and that's what I think we're trying to offer.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, 5 recommendations. Is this report agreed? Thank you very much, and thank you all for your attendance and your contributions today, and have the rest of a nice evening. If it is nice outside, I don't know. Thank you.